I'm going to be honest with you. This isn't off the top that I wasn't even sure we would or should even talk about, but it's so big that it at least needs to be addressed. And that is, of course, the Rolling Stone article about Zack Snyder, the whole Release the Snyder Cut movement, and all that kind of stuff that came out yesterday. Now, let me preface all this by saying that we are not endorsing or validating or confirming anything that is in this article. This article is written by a respected journalist out of a respected trade in Rolling Stone magazine, all that kind of stuff. But we are neither saying any of it is what is purported in this thing is true or is not true. But it is a very interesting and I would say dark portrayal of a movement that is being lost in the headline of the thing. So, Jonathan, let's bring up the article here, the headline here. So basically, there's this article, and the problem with this article to me is that the headline is not the headline.
No.
Like the headline of this article is exclusive. Fake accounts fueled the Snyder Cut online army. And that is such a small, almost, dare I say, irrelevant point, or one of the points in this article. Because even when it comes to the fake accounts, that's something that's been around. I mean, there was already studies done by cybersecurity places that showed that, yes, there was fake bots being used in the Academy voting for those stupid, like, non-awards that they gave out at the Academy this year. That's fine. That's a separate issue. So, yes, it says there were other cyber firms employed to find out about this, and they said that 13% of the online Release the Snyder Cut thing was fake and bot-driven and all that kind of stuff. Okay, let's just say that's true. Let's just say that's true. That means 87% of it was legit.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. And so that's why I don't understand why you lead, especially when you read this article, why you lead with some fake accounts fueled the Snyder Cut online thing. Yeah, 13%. That's almost only 1 out of every 10. Almost 1 out of every 10. I mean, so I'm not worried about it. I mean, that part's irrelevant. Where this article does get a little bit disturbing is how Tatiana Siegel, who is the journalist who wrote the article, and obviously spent months working on this, she lays out a timeline of events that when certain things in a timeline are laid out become a little bit disturbing. Again, if true, we're not validating anything that's in this article. We're not confirming any of it. We're just talking about what's in the article. But it starts with a really interesting point, which is this, was Zack Snyder did not want Jeff Johns and Jonathan Bergs, who did not support the Snyder Cut. They thought that Snyder's version of the film initially was not going to work, and they also encouraged the change of direction before the theatrical cut came out, right? So when the Snyder Cut was getting ready to come out, Zack Snyder wanted Johns and Bergs' name taken off the movie as producers on it. Even though they were producers for a lot of the film, but he wanted their names taken off as producers. Hey, nothing wrong with that. If you feel a certain name shouldn't be a credit on a film, there is nothing wrong with saying, I don't think that name should be credited. You might be right, you might be wrong, but I think it's perfectly okay that a director voiced that. Nothing wrong with that. But here's where it gets really interesting. So Jeff Johns and Jonathan Berg, they refused. They weren't going to take their names off it. So this is where this article gets a little bit interesting. And it says this is in the very first paragraph. The Snyders admit that they did ask the studio to intervene after a personal plea to Johns and Berg was ignored. On June 26, 2020, Snyder had had enough. According to multiple sources familiar with the matter, Snyder confronted an executive in the studio's post-production department and issued a threat. Jeff and John are dragging their feet on taking their names out of my cut. Now I will destroy them on social media. Now I will destroy them.
That's hearsay though. That actual quote.
That quote.
Not...
This is they're saying they have the writer of the article says they have several sources who are close to the situation, and the executive who said that that's what they said, that I'm going to destroy them on social media now. And basically that sets up, the reason that's in the first paragraph is because it sets up this very long article that outlines a pattern of weaponizing social media and using it as a weapon to attack anybody that stood in their way. Now, there's a difference between a positive online movement that wants to try to accomplish something good. There's a difference between that and saying, let's accomplish our goals using the tactics of, I don't know what the proper word to use here. Let's use online violence to try to get what we want. Let's attack the people who are standing in our way. Let's not try to talk about the benefits of what we're trying to get. Let's not talk about, a real positive thing. Let's weaponize and try to go on. And basically the rest of this article, true or not, the rest of this article lays out in a direct timeline the act of weaponizing to attack. The article goes on to talk a lot about how shortly after this event, certain online accounts got set up. Suddenly pictures started to get published of certain WB executives being beheaded and shared actively around. Other WB executives in Ku Klux Klan outfits and around. There were some executives who just simply had to get off social media because they were being targeted and all that kind of stuff. It got so bad that Warner Brothers had to employ cybersecurity to get involved, to start investigating a lot of this. There's also a really disturbing implication that gets made in the article. And again, this is what the article says. I'm simply telling you what the article says. But they lay out a timeline that shortly after Zack Snyder became unhappy with Jeff Johns and John Berg, it was very shortly after that Ray Fisher began his attacks on Jeff Johns and John Berg as well. A little bit later, when the Snyder Cut was greenlit to actually be made and completed and put on HBO Max, Walter Hamada was now in his position of authority, and Walter Hamada was trying to block them from using Martian Manhunter. Because at the time, the article claims, Warner Brothers and Hamada had other plans for Martian Manhunter, and they did not want Martian Manhunter used in the Snyder Cut. This upset Zack Snyder, according to the article. And just days after that, Ray Fisher began his public attacks on Walter Hamada, making accusations, and again, just repeating what's in the article here, making accusations that Warner Brothers hired an outside law firm, an outside organization headed by a former federal judge to come in and do a third-party independent investigation of the claims, and that third-party independent investigation came back and says we found no wrongdoing by Walter Hamada. He wasn't even in a position of power during the time that the original Justice League was being made, blah, 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 blah. But they set up this timeline that Snyder gets upset with Johns and Berg, Ray Fisher starts attacking them online. Zack Snyder gets upset with Walter Hamada, Ray Fisher starts making accusations, starts attacking Walter Hamada online. And then shortly after that, Ray Fisher gets cast in a big role in Rebel Moon. And again, total coincidence? Maybe. Absolutely, maybe. But they are painting a picture in this article going bit by bit by bit. With the whole term of them weaponizing, or the allegations of them weaponizing fandom, the writer of the article even highlights an incident where she had written an article about something going on there, and Zack Snyder, she alleges, contacted her and said, you should take out a couple of these sentences. It was almost like a mobster pushing somebody for protection money. Say, it'd be a real shame if your nice window got broken. Because she claims that Zack Snyder said to her, hey, you should probably take these sentences out because, my online followers can be pretty rough. My online fans can be pretty rough. She refused to take out the sentences. She says, like clockwork, immediately as soon as she posted that, she started getting attacked. And it's funny, too, because once this article got put out, I jumped online and I noticed that instead of anybody addressing the content of the article, people just started attacking the writer of the article. Instead of actually addressing things in the article, they just attacked the article. I've said before.
By the way, proving much of the author.
Pretty much
of
proving
the
her point.
Yeah.
Right. Pretty much proving her
Proving
point.
her point.
I've often said before that It is a sign that your position is weak. When somebody says something that you are incapable of addressing, and being incapable of addressing what was said, you have to attack the person who said it. And I just saw basically that unleashed last night. Now, there's a lot more in this article.
Oh, yeah.
There is a lot more in this article about threats and people having to get offline and all this kind of stuff, about the weaponizing of online social media. And it paints a dark picture. And here's the thing. I don't think this is something that's, you and I were talking about this before the show started today. I don't think that's something that's limited to comic book movies or the Snyderverse, or
no.
I think this is something that is very much part of almost every fandom, whether it's Star Wars fandom, whether it's video game fandom, music fandom, collectible fandom, sneaker fandom, music fandom, you name it. Whatever there's a fandom for, I think this is something that is potentially a problem. And again, when I read the article, I thought, man, I hope a lot of this isn't legit, but the very fact that a lot of people, instead of reading the article, just jump to, she's being paid to write this, or she's just lying. It's like, well, she's not a nobody fucking loser YouTuber like me who's just going, I'm just going to say whatever. I mean, she's a legit journalist at a legit trade who put months of research into this. Now, that doesn't mean all the things that she was told was true. I'm not purporting that they are. But I'm saying it's a type of article that I think anybody who is remotely thoughtful needs to read and take a look at how we all behave online and social media and recognize, whether you are a detractor of Zack Snyder, whether you are a supporter of Zack Snyder, whatever, that's irrelevant. I think there's a lot of stuff in this article that is a real warning sign. It's the beacons of Gondor that are being lit here, saying there's a real problem with the way that we use and utilize and act in social media. And I think this just highlights it all. Hey guys, we want to take a second and thank the sponsor of this video, BetterHelp. In the age of social media, you might think that everybody's life except yours is perfect because everybody always posts the best memories, the most glamorous shots. But you and I both know that's not how life is. We get pitched some serious curveballs, and sometimes it seems like a lot of them. And we always encourage each other to get out there and to get into better physical health, going to the gym and eating right. But it's about time we started paying more attention to our mental health as well. And that's where our friends at BetterHelp come in. Because see, BetterHelp is not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. You can log onto your account anytime and send private messages to your therapist, or you can schedule weekly or phone-only sessions if you're one of those people that's not really comfortable being on camera. And getting therapy every week is as easy as just a few clicks on your laptop or phone. It is time to invest in your own mental health, and BetterHelp is a great way to invest in yourself. And right now, they have a special offer for all of the John Campea Show listeners to get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Campea. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/Campea. Anyway, I just wanted to give a full kind of outline of the story here, Rob, but you were the one who kind of brought this article to my attention. What stood out to you in it?
Well, first of all, I want to say I think you're absolutely right about the fact that forget that this is about this incident. This is about a much wider thing that's happening in our society. This just happens to be an incredibly well-researched piece that really details the danger of social media and how it can be weaponized, which I think is really important. So I wish people would take your feelings out of the Snyder situation, but when you read this, think about it as a much wider reaching commentary on our society. I think that needs to be said. However, I thought this was fascinating because I look at it from the creative standpoint, like what Zack Snyder did. So Zack Snyder made Batman v Superman.
Right.
And I really like the ultimate cut of Batman v Superman. I did not like the theatrical version. And from what we understand, Warner Brothers thought this movie was great. Then they had second thoughts. They didn't back their filmmaker. They have to cut the movie down. Same thing happened to David Ayer's Suicide Squad. They brought in a trailer company to recut the movie. So I think that where this all really started was with a studio that was not collaborating like, say, the MCU does, but the DC movies have more of an auteurist vision. But the studio is not collaborating. They were not working in tandem with their filmmaker. They didn't do it with Zack Snyder on Batman v Superman and Justice League as well. So we saw a lot of dysfunction at that level. And that's where I thought all of this started. And then, of course, if I was Zack Snyder, I'd be pissed, man. I made Watchmen. I made 300 for you people. I made Batman v Superman that still made $800-something million. So he was somebody who had done good work with the studio. The studio basically became adversarial with him, I think needlessly so. And that's where all of this started to spin out of control. Let's hire Joss Whedon. I can't even imagine what it was like to be Zack Snyder and to have Joss Whedon be brought in and have this project you've been working on for years taken away from you. That was horrible. And that was where it began. So I think the fault of all of this, it does have a trigger. It has and I blame that studio brass for the beginnings of this. However, that said, what we saw, I mean, we as fans, John, I don't care what goes on with studio politics, nor should I care about, I don't care. All I want to do is see the damn movie. And I wanted to see Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's what I wanted. I think all these fans, that's how it started. But when you're sitting at home and you don't understand how the business of entertainment works, we think we do, but we don't really. So you have all these people that are trying to support, in a way, I think in their minds, it's like fandom was trying to do good. Like we want to see Zack Snyder's movie.
And it should be noted, I think, even in light of this article, I think the vast majority of people who were involved in the Release the Snyder Cut movement, probably exactly that was their motivation.
Yeah, and I want to see, like you and I were attacked. I'm like, bro, no one's going to make this movie. This movie is never going to happen because Justice League came out, because it's never happened anyway. But when HBO Max came along, you and I both said, no, who's going to pay for this? How, if they're going to make a Snyder Cut? And we said, it's going to be expensive. It's not done. The cut's not done.
No, we said that for years.
This article talks about...
everybody told us we were wrong, that it was done, but it was clearly not
And
done.
they get into the actual money here. The first money was going to be $60 million. Then it was $13 million more because Zack Snyder, by the way, I love this part, he's out there shooting more footage in his goddamn backyard. I'm like, good for you, bro. That's like something I would do. Don't ask for permission. Beg for forgiveness. Shoot the stuff you want. I love that. Ben Affleck, come back here. You know, Jared Leto, come here. Play Doomsday Joker. That now I've got a 6-scale figure that. So he does that, but he's also fighting the studio. So this game started to play that really, and everyone was at fault. It seems to me that everyone is culpable in certain ways about this, and I think it was an unfortunate experience all the way around. Now, as a fan, I love my Zack Snyder's 4K Blu-ray, and I'm glad to have it. But was it worth it? At the end of the day, was it worth the cost in human misery?
The price tag that had to pay. Ray, you were going to say something?
Murta pointed out, all this stuff is flying over my head, but Zack Snyder, he made a post today.
Yes.
On his Vero account. Did you see it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The one with the picture, if I retreat, whatever, because Jonathan has it. I don't know if you wanted to take a look at that.
Well, not yet. Not yet. Okay. But I mean, but it goes a little bit deeper too, because while movies like Godzilla versus Kong and Wonder Woman 84 were outperformed Justice League, what started happening is that the weaponization of that movement continued, and you started seeing all the review bombing of like Godzilla versus Kong.
And that's Adam Wingard.
That's Adam Wingard. Poor Adam Wingard, who had nothing to do with this drama. And the article writes that Adam Wingard reached out to Zack Snyder to ask him, to beg him, call off the dogs. Like, this is my movie and I'm getting review bombed by your followers. To which, according to the article, Zack Snyder's response was, I don't control my fans.
Yeah, and you know, Adam Wingard is one of us. You know, he is a fan. He's a filmmaker. He's worked his way up. Godzilla versus Kong was his leap forward into what all filmmakers dream of. If you're a genre film fan and you wanted to make horror movies and he comes out of that, this is his shot, man. You know, and this is coming out of a pandemic. It's getting a theatrical release. And Adam Wingard, I really like the guy. I think he's a stand-up guy. I've loved his work in the past. And to have read this in this article, I'm like, God damn, man, I would have been like, if I had known that, I would have asked people. I said, look, Adam Wingard's one of us. You're going after a fan who has achieved a lifelong goal of making a giant monster movie. I mean, you can't imagine that. I'm sure Adam Wingard, in his mind, like, this was the greatest thing that could ever possibly happen to him as far as his career is concerned. And it worked out for the best, ultimately. But can you imagine, John? You know how hard it is to make anything? Here he gets his shot, and suddenly he has to deal with his own audience. People that should be rooting for him. Going after him for what? Why?
Yeah, it's
Because
again,
a studio gave him hundreds of millions of dollars to make giant monster movies? I mean, I would have been pissed if I were him.
yeah, and I'm sure he was, and I'm sure he was upset. And again, I think more than anything else, this is you've already mentioned this. This is really more of a cautionary tale about how we all, and listen, I don't know that there's any of us with clean hands in this, to be honest with you.
No.
I think all of us should be looking at how maybe we engage online and weaponize what's said. Again, because I doubt any of us have totally clean hands, but a lot of the stuff about you talked about the cost in misery that was inflicted on people through this. It's really unfortunate, and it's
Look, I think ultimately I would say this, that, and there's an upcoming Designing Hollywood podcast where I interview Ellen Moroznik, who's one of the greatest costume designers ever.
by the way, latest Designing Hollywood with the designer of Peacemaker
Yes.
is actually up on the channel right now. Make sure you go and check that out. Peacemaker,
And
one of the best thing Warner Brothers ever put on television.
Ellen told me if you look at her credits, she did Fatal Attraction, she did Wall Street. I mean, she worked for all these. She just finished Oppenheimer for Christopher Nolan. And she said the problem with the business now is that there are not the decisive leaders that there used to be. And then she said, working for somebody like Christopher Nolan, that guy is a leader. She was like, it was like working in the 80s where you work with directors. He knows what he wants. He doesn't have to see 100 different versions of something. And a lot of these costume designers who've worked for a long time have told me the same thing, that the people who work in the business now, they don't believe in themselves enough. They don't know. And she's like, this has become a problem. And I think that studios and their filmmakers used to work more in tandem. They used to, because the studio heads, there was like one person. Now with corporate, it's tough. There's too many cooks in the room, and that's what we need. And I think that this started with a failure at the top at Warner Brothers that created a cascade effect.
Anyway, guys, we're already half hour into the show, and we're
Wow.
not even out of the off the top, so we need to move on here. But the question is for you. Have you guys had a chance to see this article and give it a read? What about it stands out to you? Do you see it as a cautionary tale about the weaponization of social media and stuff like that? However you see it, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.